Ortiz.
Wilder won arbitration and he's getting his third fight with.
So what that mean?
It means that they
gonna win?
Well, no, it means that the Fury can't fight nobody else but Wilder.
Okay, so Fury again. Yeah, I told you like the first 2 times. Fury's gonna beat on him. You can't fuck with Fury.
But even now, after the trainer switch, he got rid of Breland.
What that mean? What you gonna learn from a nigga that you knocked out?
All trainers ain't world champions.
What are you gonna learn from somebody? How's somebody gonna teach you something that he can't even do either?
Because
you heard what Tyson Fury said?
All trainers.
He said I busted. He said I broke your eye bone and broke your eye bone. And he make Wilder look like a sucker. Wilder look like a sucker. Oh, the nigga, you took all this shit, and then he made you bite your words. Oh, he told Tyson Fury something about changing his trainer. You changed your trainer. You just changed your trainer to somebody that got you knocked the fuck out. And Tyson Fury beat him up too. So what? And now what? And all the excuses for the second fight he was making, terrible.
So always, you don't believe the gloves? Huh? You don't believe the gloves?
No.
You seen what happened with Margarito?
Come on now. David caught him. That means you gotta fire the white niggas
but,
too.
Why he got that? Margarito?
Why he still got that white guy in his camp then? The white guy was the one that was in his and that means he gotta go fire the white guy then. Why you keep the white guy and fire the black guy? You blame it on the black guy. And you be talking all that racism shit, and you gonna go fight a black guy. And the white guy was the one in the corner, and the white guy was the one in his in Tyson Fury locker room, watching put on the gloves and wrapped his hand. So what? All that makes then he spiked his water. Come on now, where you gonna put it in? What can you put in water that's gonna make you Henny? What do you put Henny? It would have been brown. Where you put tequila? Bruh. What did he put in the water?
Roofie! Could have put some roofie in that shit. That should be clear, man. So he was trying to line up with Fury.
He's not getting his belts back. That is not happening.
Pretty sure Deontay Wilder's supporters are watching this video and shaking their fists at the sky. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a movement very soon to cancel Chris Colbert based on him not buying into Deontay Wilder's conspiracy theory. Raising questions. Yeah. Questions that question the validity of what Wilder's saying. Rather than addressing the discrepancies with Wilder's theory, what his fans will presume to do is simply attack Chris Colbert and cancel him.
They won't make it make sense.
Because they can't. Because they, by themselves, can't reconcile
this theory.
What it is that Wilder's saying. Only Wilder can do that, and Wilder chose not to speak at the press conference, the kickoff press conference for his upcoming trilogy fight with Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder chose not to address it as well.
He doesn't want to talk about it.
At least not while Tyson Fury's in the room and certain members of the media. When he's amongst a group of his peers and his sycophants and his yes men, he's pretty talkative.
Just not with everybody else.
Anybody and everybody who might put him in an uncomfortable situation, asking him uncomfortable questions. He's pretty tight-lipped about the whole thing, and so is Malik Scott.
Yeah, you didn't want to talk about it either.
Oddly enough, neither did Tyson Fury, which I find peculiar. I think it was Kurt DeVille of Counterpunch Boxing that raised the question, why didn't Tyson Fury confront Wilder about what Wilder said? I mean, even if Wilder's not talking and he's not talking to you, you can still talk to him, and you can still address all the accusations that he made about you. Yet, that press conference, Tyson Fury didn't make any mention about the Glovegate conspiracy, which lends credence to the notion that this entire conspiracy could be part of some elaborate ruse between the two teams to sell a third fight because, to the fight fans, there really wasn't a need for one.
Not after the ass whooping that he got.
I'll tell you, we've been all through that, and that's really not even what this segment of this video is about. This segment of this video is about how there are many quote-unquote fight fans out there that choose to be outraged without addressing the discrepancies that individuals like myself, several others, Chris Colbert, there are many individuals out there who choose to be outraged that not everyone buys into Wilder's conspiracy theory, not everyone is on the same wavelength when it comes to that. How, instead of addressing those discrepancies, instead of addressing those questions...
Oh, they just get butthurt.
They just get upset with you that you don't believe him. Where many of them are likely very upset right now with Chris Colbert, who's going to be in action very soon against Tuksok Nyambiar, the way they're upset with him, the way they were upset with Michael Moorer, when he doubted the validity of, what it was Wilder was saying, something about a costume, the way they were upset with Paulie Malignaggi and Andre Ward.
The Charlo brothers, too.
You don't need me to tell you that there's a lot of people out there that question the validity of what Wilder is saying because it doesn't make sense. And essentially, it's a criminal case more than anything else. You're talking about being drugged. You're talking about being assaulted with a concealed weapon inside of Tyson Fury's glove. And if all of this were true, if all of this were proven, there wouldn't even be a third fight. reality, Tyson Fury would find himself in handcuffs, in jail, with his boxing license revoked, and his future in jeopardy.
But you're not supposed to ask questions.
You're just supposed to believe whatever Deontay Wilder says for the simple fact that he said it. You're supposed to pledge fealty to the Bronze Bomber for some reason.
Pledge loyalty to him for what?
Many of the questions that Chris Colbert raised in this recent video will likely see him coming under fire from Deontay Wilder's core supporters. I have no doubts that there's going to be a movement very soon to cancel him. He'll be the subject of many LDBC videos to come.
Because he doesn't blindly follow Deontay Wilder.
I didn't know he was under obligation to do that. I didn't know that anyone was under obligation to do that, to simply believe whatever it is Deontay Wilder says in the absence of proof, in the absence of concrete evidence that would vindicate Deontay Wilder and could possibly see him getting his belt back.
Yeah, if he could prove any of that shit.
Because over a year later, he still hasn't, and having a third fight with Tyson Fury is not a substitute for evidence. I mean, not even if he wins, that still doesn't prove that there was foul play at work in the second fight or the first.
Chris Colbert's made himself some enemies.
For his honesty, for his critical thinking, and for the questions that he raises in reference to everything Deontay Wilder said, but has yet to prove.
They're gonna try to cancel this guy.
They're gonna call him a hater because he doesn't want to fall in and toe the company line.
The way they call me and you haters.
The way they're expecting me and you to toe that company line, even if we're not a part of that fucking company.
Mob mentality is what it is.
Oh, there's a lot of like-mindedness going on, just not a lot of critical thinking.
Why would there be?
These are the kind of people that let someone else do all their thinking for them. They let the people over there at the PBC tell them that Gervonta Davis versus Mario Barrios is a full-fledged world title fight. They let the people over there at the PBC tell them that that's pay-per-view worthy for the simple fact that they said so, even though in reality, those people didn't know nothing about no fucking Mario Barrios. You know, Leonard Ellerby, he said, Josh Taylor's an excellent fighter. Probably 70 people at Tank's Fight even heard of him.
Even though 1.6 million American homes watched him fight.
But Leonard won't tell you that. What he will tell you is that he's an excellent fighter, in reference to Josh Taylor, but he can't draw shit in the United States. Can't draw shit. And see, that's the problem. That's a problem. The only way that's a huge, huge fight is if you do something over there in the United Kingdom. And again, it's that whatever we decide, we'll let you guys know. And again, I'm just being honest. If you asked the 16,570 people in that building tonight, I guarantee you, I said it earlier, might have been 100 people. It probably would have been 70 people would have even heard of Taylor. And I guarantee you the 70 people would have been included in this media room. My staff. The Showtime staff. And it's funny because he keeps talking about how people don't know Josh Taylor. I'd wager even less people know Mario Barrios, but you were okay to fight him.
Have 1.6 million people ever tuned in to see him fight?
I think that's a very valid question, it being that Josh Taylor is a lot more accomplished as a boxer than Mario Barrios. Even if Josh Taylor isn't a household name in America, neither is Mario Barrios. But the difference between them is Josh Taylor is a lot more proven, a lot more accomplished at this weight than Mario was. And you're okay fighting Mario, but you're not okay fighting Josh. You'll just come up with excuse after excuse after excuse not to fight that guy. And
they'll believe you.
The sycophants,
they'll eat it up.
Hell, they'll go as far as berating Josh Taylor as a fighter, diminishing his accomplishments as an undisputed champion at 140 pounds, even though he was kicking ass and taking names at this weight before Gervonta Davis even landed on his off-brand opponent, his off-brand champion.
They'll shit on Josh to praise Davis and his Mickey Mouse belt.
Even though they didn't start endorsing those Mickey Mouse belts until the PBC decided collecting them on their side of the street, since they don't want their guys mixing it up with anybody else's fighters, anybody else's champions.
Alternative facts, alternative champions.
Like what we see with Deontay Wilder's fans. Gervonta Davis's fans won't address the facts of the matter. They won't address the varying discrepancies that individuals like me and you might raise in reference to a fighter like Gervonta Davis and how nobody was endorsing Reggie belts before.
Not really.
I mean, not for the most part. If anything, for the most part, people were complaining about the abundance of these lesser titles by way of the WBA. Yet all of a sudden, these guys have completely changed their stance. They've done a full 180 on how they view Reggie belts based on Gervonta Davis collecting them.
Pretty much.
There's no critical thinking with these people. There's no independent thought. They're happy to be told what to endorse,
what to do,
and how to think, which is why when you raise certain questions reference to Deontay Wilder's Glovegate conspiracy theory, they won't address the discrepancies associated with that matter. They'll just call you a hater, assume to levy personal attacks against you, and try to cancel you.
Which doesn't really work.
Since none of us are dependent on these individuals for anything, so they don't actually have the power to cancel me or you.
They're too fucking stupid to know that.
No critical thinking. Canceling? That's just a buzzword. In the case of a Gervonta Davis, Leonard Ellerby, people over there at TMT and PBC, they're not attempting to sell you a fighter or a champion.
No, he's a star.
And that's why his career is the way that it is. That's why he finds himself moving up in weight for Reggie titles as opposed to real ones against full-fledged world champions. And his followers will express a lot of outrage if you don't fall in line with their way of thinking. It's not a surprise. It's not even a secret that Al Hyman, the guy who's really in charge of what's going on here, he's a music guy. And that way, he's a gimmick guy. As in the music industry, there are a lot of gimmicks. And a lot of gimmicks are used in the PBC's marketing. In this instance, the TMT, which falls under the umbrella of the PBC.
It's all gimmicks over there.
Who needs to fight full-fledged world champions? Who needs to fight for the undisputed crown at a given weight when you can always shoot for Reggie titles as the WBA is mass-producing them these days? Who needs it?
Who needs to fight for legacy, right?
Right. In their world, legacy and finance are mutually exclusive, when in reality, legacy and finance in the sport of boxing go hand in hand, as the biggest fights, the biggest, most lucrative fights the sport has ever seen were legacy fights.
Leonard versus Duran.
Leonard versus Hearns. Leonard versus Hagler. Hagler versus Hearns. De La Hoya versus Trinidad. Mayweather versus De La Hoya.
De La Hoya versus Pacquiao.
Mayweather versus Pacquiao would have been the legacy fights of this sport. Those same fights have also been the most lucrative. Yet in the postmodern era of boxing, what the PBC is attempting to do is drive a wedge between legacy and finance.
They want them to be mutually exclusive.
So that they don't have to risk anything. Leonard Ellerby says that nobody knows Josh Taylor, but nobody knows Mario Barrios. I'd wager that a Josh Taylor fight is still bigger than a Mario Barrios fight, because I don't recall 1.6 million people ever tuning in to see a Mario Barrios fight. In fact, before Gervonta Davis even picked that guy...
Nobody ever heard of him.
So, the whole bit about not being a draw in the United States, I mean, where is Mario Barrios a draw?
Not around here.
They're not selling fights or fighters over there. You have to understand that. What they are attempting to do is sell you idols. If they were in the business of making fights, the biggest fights, well, that involves working with other promoters that might have dealings with other platforms, and you do what you have to do to make fights happen. That's if they were in the business of making fights, but they're not.
They don't believe in their product that much.
That's why they view what are occupational hazards in the sport of boxing that come with the territory. They view those occupational hazards as unnecessary risks, even though that's what the sport is all about.
For us.
At least to the boxing fans who you are attempting to appeal to. You might be able to fool a few people, quite a few people, with those gimmicks. But not everybody. Can't fool everybody all of the time.
Thanks to Star for selling 15,000, 16,000 tickets.
So then what's Canelo for selling 66, close to 70,000, breaking the indoor record for attendance?
All right, he's not a star because he fights on an app.
Oh yeah, he's not a star in your world. Errol Spence Jr. is a star. Canelo, he just sells more tickets than Errol and Gervonta and everybody in your stable.
These guys are fucking brainwashed, man.
A rabid horde of raging xenophobes who are using tribalist sentiments to try to guilt-trip me and you into liking the same fighters that they like. Good luck with that. And finally, in welterweight news, Keith Thurman is not interested in Virgil Ortiz and Jaron Ennis. He has his sights set on a title. Now I've got my eyes geared towards the biggest fights at 147. I would say that he probably has to climb the ladder a little bit more, but only because he's gunning after me. I'm not gunning after him. I got my guns pointed at different targets, mainly world champions, because I want to get back on that world champion status. So I'm glad that he's got the fire and the passion and the grit to call me out. I've seen a little bit on the boy. Can't speak much because I haven't seen him much, so I'm not going to go deep in anything there, but he definitely shows potential. Lets his hands go. Seems like he's a power puncher. Seems like he can hurt a guy. Seems like he's a little bit wide still a little bit open still, but besides that, man, it's a good fight. I've only heard of this kid through a few people due to the call-out. Besides that, I haven't really heard much about this kid. On his interest in a potential fight against Jaron Ennis, like I said, anything that gets presented to me, I'll look at it. These young bucks have not been presented yet. I really think they're still just climbing the ladder. I think they know they belong with the best fighters in the world. They're starting to build their names, starting to get recognition. The young man you just mentioned, he might be on Showtime. I never heard of him. Them young dogs, I remember being a young dog. When them young dogs are barking and they're hungry, it's one thing to have a barking dog. It's another thing to have a hungry barking dog. So when they're young and they're hungry and they're barking, that's filled with passion, and let's just see what happens to the boy in his career. You know me, if I get a phone call, that's his name. If any name is presented to me on a list, then that's legitimacy of me potentially seeing them in the ring. And you know, Thurman gets creative with his comments.
Young dog this.
Passion that. He claims he's never heard of the boy. He claims he's never heard of Jaron Ennis. That could be Keith Thurman faking the funk, not having to answer questions in reference to the fighter by pretending to be ignorant to his existence. Could be that, or it could be a testament to how far removed from the sport Keith Thurman has been the last 2 years, because the last 2 years he's fought absolutely no one and done absolutely nothing.
Except for a lot of interviews.
He claims he's targeting the world champions at this weight. Right now there are only two, Errol Spence Jr., who doesn't want to seem to give him the time of day, and Terrence Crawford, who we all know he's not likely to face after 2 years of inactivity. Not that Bob Arum is willing to put up the money for the fight.
Is he?
Or even if he were, I still don't think Keith would walk in there with this guy under these circumstances. So to what world champions is he referring to?
Beats me.
It's a convenient way of dealing with difficult questions. He's being called out by Jaron Ennis. He's being called out by Virgil Ortiz. He's been in this division long enough that he's seeing himself become the target for the next crop of fighters, the next cycle of welterweights. And he sounds eerily familiar to how he sounded when they used to bring up the name of Errol Spence Jr.
It's the same shit all over again.
It's the same shit he used to say years ago whenever that guy's name got brought up. I think that Keith Thurman has come full circle. When I say full circle, what I mean by that is Keith Thurman used to be one of the most critical guys of Floyd Mayweather Jr. You still levy all kinds of attacks, all kinds of criticisms towards that fighter, though time itself has proven Keith Thurman to be even more selective than Floyd Mayweather Jr. was accused of being. As Floyd Mayweather Jr., in his career, became a 5-division champion. Keith Thurman...
You don't stand much chance of doing that now.
You think about how much shit this guy had to say about Floyd Mayweather Jr., and how his career greatly pales in comparison to Floyd's.
Pretty mediocre when you think about it.
I'm not expecting Keith Thurman to fight Virgil Ortiz or Jaron Ennis, but bear in mind, Jaron Ennis is on his same side of the street, and you'll notice.
That doesn't guarantee a fight.